Okay, the reading for this week is the next part in our series on Chinese civilization and culture, and today we will be reading an essay by Lu Jiuyuan, who is a Neo-Confucian scholar and writer and essayist of the late Song Dynasty, or the Southern Song Dynasty. And just to review, the Song Dynasty begins in 960, so it follows the Tang Dynasty. Tang Dynasty 618 to 906, followed by the Song, followed by a short 54 years of a sort of interregnum period, and then the Song Dynasty, which begins 960, ends in 1279, and the Song Dynasty is usually divided into two periods, the Northern Song and the Southern Song. Southern Song begins in 1127, and it ends in 1279. Okay, if you want to review all of these Chinese dynasty dates, click on the link in the description below and go to my China's Major Dynasties, the song, where I sing Frère Jacques with the lyrics replaced by with the major dynasties of the Chinese history. Okay, now on to this essay by Lu Jiuyuan. All right, introduction. And as always, I should mention these essays are taken from Sources of Chinese Tradition, compiled by William Theodore de Barry and Irene Bloom, Volume 1. Not all of the worksheets are taken from that, but 80% or so of them are from that book. So I'll provide the information to that book so you can purchase it and read the essays in full and follow along. And again, these worksheets that I'm using in this class are provided, or they're compiled by somebody at Columbia University, and I'll provide the links to these worksheets, PDF files, in the description as well. Neo-Confucianism is a general term used to refer to the renaissance of Confucianism during the Song Dynasty, following a long period in which Buddhism and Taoism had dominated the philosophical world of the Chinese, and also to the various philosophical schools of thought that developed as a result of that renaissance. Okay, so I like to think of this in sort of simplified Hegelian thesis, antithesis, synthesis kind of formula, right? It begins with Confucius, and the early Confucian writers, right? And then we have Buddhism and Taoism rise after that as a kind of antithesis to the Confucian ideas. And then we get this synthesis. We should avoid, of course, this sort of simplistic view of Hegel, but I think it works here to understand this larger movement from early Confucian writings to the Buddhist and Taoist, the rise of Buddhism and Taoism after following Confucius, and then this synthesis of Neo-Confucianism, which incorporates some of the critiques of Confucianism that came from Taoism and Buddhism. So this is kind of a fusing of these thesis and antithesis from previous centuries. All right. Neo-Confucianism had its roots in the late Tang, came to maturity in the Northern and Southern Song periods, and continued to develop in the Yuan, Ming, and Qing periods. Okay, review the dates for these three periods: the Yuan dynasty, the Yuan period of the Mongols, the Ming dynasty that followed, and the Qing dynasty was the last major dynasty before the Republic. As a whole, Neo-Confucianism can best be understood as an intellectual reaction to the challenges of Buddhism and Taoist philosophy, in which avowedly Confucian scholars incorporated Buddhist and Taoist concepts in order to produce a more sophisticated new Confucian metaphysics. Okay, so again, it's a synthesis of the previous thesis and antithesis. As Neo-Confucianism developed, two trends of thought emerged out of the Southern Song philosopher and official Zhu Xi's synthesis of the learning of principle and the learning of the mind and heart. Underline Zhu Xi. He's the sort of major figure of Neo-Confucianism, whose name immediately appears whenever you read about descriptions of Neo-Confucianism, and his influence in Japan was very big. He even had a sort of school of thought named Neo-Confucianism, named after him. It's called Shushigaku in Japanese. Zhu Xi, he's also the one who came up with the 4 books, the Su Si, the 4书, rather, the 4 books, and made those the canonical texts of Confucianism from his era onward. All right. Sinologist says both trends agreed that all the myriad things of the universe are manifestations of a single principle, or li, and that this principle is the essence of morality. By understanding the principle that underlies the universe, just as Buddhists understood all things in the universe as manifestations of the single Buddha spirit, then men may understand the moral principles that they must put into practice in order to achieve an ordered family, good government, and peace under heaven. The 2 trends of thought differ, however, on the way in which human beings are to understand principle. Okay, so basically 2 trends emerged out of this, out of Juxi's thought, and so Neo-Confucianism is usually described as having these 2 trends, or 2 strands, and Jiuyuan presents one of the strands. He articulates its ideas in the following essay. In the following document, the Song Dynasty, Neo-Confucian, Jiuyuan, born in 1139, died in 1193, states his side of the argument. Okay, so as always, these worksheets have a short version and a longer version. I will read the longer version of this of the excerpt from this essay. Mind is Principle by Jiuyuan. And let me read the study questions first, so we can think about these as we read, and we'll discuss them in class. Question number 1. If the mind and principle are one, how then does one go about understanding principle, which is morality? Question number 2. What implications might Lu Jiuyuan's understanding of the relation between the human mind and the principle of heaven have for the authority of imperial laws? Okay, so what implications might his thoughts have on law and on governance and so forth? And question number 3. What implications might Lu Jiuyuan's understanding of the relation between the human mind and the principle of heaven have for everyday behavior? Okay, so the second question number 2 is about governance, statecraft, and so forth, from the perspective of the ruler. And the third is from the perspective of the common people. All right, here's the essay. Mind is Principle by Lu Jiuyuan. Mencius said, quote, "That wherein human beings differ from the birds and animals is but slight. The multitude of people relinquish it, while the noble person retains it." End quote. This is from Mencius. All right. What is relinquished is the mind. That is why Mencius said that some people lose their original mind. It's a quote from Mencius 4b19. What is to be preserved is the mind. That is why Mencius said, quote, "The great man is he who does not lose the mind of a newborn babe." Mencius 4b12. What Mencius referred to as the 4 sprouts, underline the 4 sprouts, these are his famous 4 sprouts of the human mind or human soul, heart, of pity and compassion, shame and aversion, modesty and compliance, and the sense of right and wrong, or yi, are this mind. It is what heaven has endowed in us. All human beings have this mind, and all minds are endowed with this principle. The mind is Principle. Okay, that's the title of the essay. Underline this important sentence, and this important claim, and we'll discuss it in class. Continuing. The affairs of the universe are my own affairs. My own affairs are the affairs of the universe. The human mind is most intelligent, and principle, Li, is most clear. Okay, so the human mind, Qing, is most intelligent, and principle, Li, is most clear. All people have this in mind, and all minds contain this principle in full. The 4 directions in upward and downward constitute the spatial continuum. What has gone by in the past and what is to come in the future constitute the temporal continuum. These continua, or the universe, are my mind, and my mind is the universe. Sages appeared tens of thousands of generations ago. They shared this mind. They shared this principle. Sages will appear tens of thousands of generations to come. They will share this mind. They will share this principle. Over the 4 seas, sages appear. They share this mind. They share this principle. The mind is one and principle is one. Perfect truth is always a unity. The essential principle is never a duality. The mind, as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, Neo-Confucianism is kind of a fusion between earlier sort of original Confucianism, Confucius ideas, with Buddhist/Taoist ideas. And one of the central Buddhist/Taoist ideas is that there are no actual dualities, right? Everything is, in fact, whatever might appear to be a duality or a binary or a antinomy is actually, in fact, a unity, a sort of 2 sides of the same coin kind of thing. Okay, so he's making a sort of Buddhist claim here. Perfect truth about truth. Perfect truth is always a unity. The essential principle is never a duality. The mind and principle, which had hitherto been previously been conceived of as 2 separate things, the mind and principle can never be separated in 2. He says here, that is why Confucius said, in my way, in my Tao, there is one thing that runs throughout. Okay, so he's quoting Confucius to say that Confucius actually had an understanding of this, even though Buddhist and Taoist influence are not great in his writings. Taoist influences are not present in his writings. That is why Confucius said, in my way there is one thing that runs throughout, and why Mencius said, the way is one and only one. So both Confucius and Mencius understood this, he's saying. Quoting Confucius, Mencius also said, there are just 2 ways, being humane, ren, and being inhumane, bu ren. Right? We talked about ren already, being humane and being inhumane. To act in a, end quote from Mencius. To act in a certain way is humaneness. Not to act in a certain way is the opposite of humaneness. Humaneness is the mind, the Qing, the principle, the li. So it's both the mind and the principle, li. Quote from Mencius, seek and you will get it. Mencius says in 6a6. Seek and you will get it means to get this principle. Those who are first to know, quote, know this principle, and those who are first awakened, again a quote from Mencius, are awakened to this principle. It is this principle that constitutes love for parents, so filial piety, reverence for elders, and the sense of alarm and commiseration when one sees a child about to fall into a well. It is this principle that makes people ashamed of shameful things and hates what should be hated. It is this principle that enables people to know what is right to be right and what is wrong to be wrong. So it is this principle that gives people a sense of yi. It is this principle that makes people deferential when deference is due and humble when humility is called for. Reverent seriousness, jing, is this principle. Rightness is this principle. Yi, rightness, is this principle. And what is internal and what is external are all this principle. Right. Whenever you see internal and external come up in Confucian and Neo-Confucian writings, underline it, because internal versus external is a very key sort of polemical issue. Where was I? Right, this is the principle. It is this principle that makes people ashamed. Oh, wait. It is this principle that constitutes love for parents, reverence for elders, in the sense of alarm and commiseration when one sees a child about to fall into a well. The child about to fall into a well, of course, is the famous episode that Mencius cites in his work to sort of prove that humans are in fact good. Because when we see a child about to fall into a well, all humans naturally sympathize with the child and will try to save it, not out of any expectation of reward or anything external, but rather because they simply want to help the child for pure reasons, motivations. It is this principle that makes people ashamed of shameful things and hate what should be hated. It is this principle that enables people to know what is right to be right and what is wrong to be wrong. It is this principle that makes people deferential when deference is due and humility is called for. I read this already. Reverent seriousness, Jing, is this principle. Rightness is this principle. And what is internal and what is external are all this principle. Mencius said, quote, what people are able to do without having learned it is innate ability. What they know without having to think about it is innate knowledge. That's from Mencius 7a:15. These are endowed in us by heaven. We definitely possess them. They are not infused into us from without. Okay, so again, the stress on internality with Mencius. The human virtue and human sense of righteousness, of right and wrong, all comes from within, according to Mencius. So humans are fundamentally good. They just need this this innately virtuous aspect of their mind, of their nature, cultivated and watered so that it will grow throughout their lives. Therefore, Mencius said, all the 10,000 things are complete in me. To turn within, to examine oneself, and find that one is sincere, there is no greater joy than this. End quote from Mencius. The teacher said that the myriad things exist luxuriantly in the mind. What permeates the mind and pouring forth extends to fill the universe is nothing but principle. Again, Li. The teacher always said that outside of the way, outside of the Tao, there are no events, and outside of events there is no Tao, the way. Which is an allusion to a famous passage from Confucius or Mencius. I can't remember who said it, but it came up recently in one of the videos. The theory that principle is due to heaven, the principle Li is due to heaven, Tian, whereas desire is due to human beings, is surely not the best doctrine. If principle is due to heaven, Tian, and desire due to man, then heaven and humans must be different. But they're not, according to him here in this essay. This theory can be traced to Lao Tzu. Lao Tzu, of course, the Taoist Lao Tzu, author of the Tao Te Ching. The record of music says, by nature, a human being is tranquil at birth. When influenced by external things, he begins to be active, which is desire arising from his nature. As one becomes conscious of things resulting from this impact, one begins to have likes and dislikes. When, as a result of these likes and dislikes, one is able to return to his original mind, the principle of heaven, the Tian Li, is destroyed. End quote from the record of music. Here is the origin of the theory that principle is from heaven, whereas desire is from humans. And the words of the record of music are based on the Taoists. If it is said that only tranquility is inborn nature, is activity not inborn nature also? It is said in the classic of documents, the Shu Jing, that, quote, the human mind is precarious, the mind of the way is subtle, end quote. Most interpreters have explained the human mind, the Xing, which is liable to make mistakes, as equivalent to human desires, and the mind of the way, the Tao, which follows moral law, as equivalent to the principle of heaven. This interpretation is wrong. And again, he reiterates his conclusion. The mind is one. So the mind and principle are one. How can a human being have two minds? All right, that's the end of the excerpt from Mind is Principle by Lu Jiuyuan. My Chinese pronunciation isn't very good this morning. It's too early in the morning for Chinese pronunciations. All right, this is a very dense essay. There's a lot to go over in it. We'll discuss more in class. That is all for now. Goodbye.